Okay, they are on.
All ready to go?
Video is streaming, so we are ready when you are.
Okay, great. I call this 5 September 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order at 7 p.m. Can we stand for a pledge of allegiance? And Commissioner Charbonneau, could you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, roll call. Charbonneau. Here. Verhey.
Here.
Hornseth.
Present.
Ullman.
Here.
And Chair Sullivan.
Here.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have citizens' comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. Those who have signed in will be given the first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker and 36 minutes total for this agenda item. Mr. Clerk, is anybody signed in?
Nobody is signed in.
Okay, all right. Well, is there anybody else who would like to speak at all? Nope. Okay, we'll move on. This is going to be quick. Okay, let's move on to the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, do we have any changes first off to that? Any approval as it exists? Okay. Mr. Clerk, can we have a roll call for the vote on the agenda?
Okay, voting on the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda. Charbonneau.
Yes.
Verhey.
Yes.
Ullman.
Yes.
Hornseth.
Yes.
And Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and on the consent agenda was the approval of the August 1st, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll move on to the special orders, presentations, and reports, and we don't have any special orders, reports, or awards. So we'll move on to the city administration report, and I'll turn it over to Director Jason Bickling.
Yeah, thank you. My report did not make it in the packet, so I have provided it as a laydown. And again, this is just my report that I also provide to council on kind of the high-end items that are working on with community development, and obviously you'll see a lot of your business in there, and then also kind of what we're working on the GIS piece. So, but yeah, happy to answer any questions if you guys have them.
I think we have one other thing that's going on in the cemetery section, too, that I think the Pioneers are still have yet to put their columbarium in as well, but was part of the 4 columbarium that came up, so I think they're actively working on that now, and I think hopefully they'll have that in prior to.
Okay, that's good, great, thank you.
And I also want to just appreciate all the hard work that you guys have been doing on the CUP presentation. So for our little work group to be able to take a look at the CUPs and see, who's in compliance, who's not, and what needs to still be done.
Yeah, that's all Selena, mostly, right?
Yeah. Okay, commissioners, does anybody have any questions for the community development? No. Okay. All right. We've already approved the consent agenda, so I'll move on to public hearings. The public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes per person, and after all speakers have spoken, a person may speak for a second time for no more than 1 minute. So the first public hearing item is Resolution 2023-016. Mr. Clerk, would you read that title into the record?
Resolution 2023-016 of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Seward, Alaska, granting a conditional use permit to Tom Tugas to construct a bunkhouse at 1804 Lear Road, Lear Industrial Subdivision, Tract B, within an industrial zoning district.
Okay. I'll need a motion and a second to proceed.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-016.
I'll second.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Administration, do you have any comments?
Yeah, so this property is owned by Lear Enterprises LLC. Tom Tugas, however, is the current lessee for this property. And the proposed structure does meet the zoning code development requirements. In the industrial zoning district, there can be a maximum lot coverage of 100%. The minimum buildable lot size is 10,000 square feet, and the setbacks are 10 feet from the front, 10 feet from each side, 20 feet from a side adjacent to a street and 10 feet in the rear. And then the building height less than 34 feet, and it meets all those requirements. The surrounding use is all industrial. You have railroad located at the west and north. Shoreside petroleum pump house and fuel tanks are located to the east. And then the industrial storage and icicle seasonal housing is located to the south. The area is not located in a flood zone, and currently sewer and power are already available to the property, but water just needs to be extended from an adjacent parcel into the parcel where the bunkhouse is proposed to be built. On page, on page 11, just running through some of the requirements that we proposed based on input from city staff, that, the applicant will work with the building and fire department, public works department to meet international fire code and international building code, as well as make that additional connection to city water on the site. And then a minimum of 1 parking space per 4 residents at maximum capacity is what is required in code for a bunkhouse. And given the current plans, which is 16 units, 2 people in each unit, 8 parking spaces have been, at a minimum, has been required. And then just that all areas not devoted to buildings, drives, or walks or parking would be covered with lawn, grass, natural ornamental shrubbery, something of this, some landscaping of the kind. And then bear-proof, bird-resistant containers be provided for all garbage and refuse for the life and the use.
Okay, all right, thank you. And now I'll open up to public hearing. Mr. Clerk, has anybody signed in?
Yes, 2 people are signed in. First one is Jeff Hetrick.
That's the next one.
Oh, the next proposal? Okay.
Okay.
It's not Jeff then.
Carol Griswold.
Carol Griswold, inside city limits. I appreciate that the applicant, Tom Tugas, has consistently provided higher quality housing for his employees. However, the location, living conditions, and parking plan are a concern and reason to fail the CUP as presented. Over the years, employee housing has expanded into the industrial zone with bunkhouses and employee campgrounds to house seasonal workers. The Commission needs to decide if more residential uses should be allowed by CUP in the industrial district, and what conditions for environmental safeguards and amenities should be required for the Seward residents living there. If the Commission decides to allow another bunkhouse, I would like to suggest that the CUP require moving the residential bunkhouse as far as possible from the bulk fuel tanks and the railway immediately adjacent to the east. Move it southwest to the corner of the property where an unidentified structure is located. The bunkhouse is only 60 feet away now. This site would provide improved access and egress, ADA parking in front of the 88 unit, better living conditions, and be adjacent to future employee housing in the former Ace Hardware building. Placing the parking lot in the rear would provide even more distance from the fuel tanks, provide more privacy, and allow landscaping in the setback between the bunkhouse and road. The proposed site is squeezed into the rear of the triangular lot. The required parking spaces in front of the bunkhouse are offset since there is no room between the adjacent warehouse and the bunkhouse for vehicles to access rooms 1, 2, and 3. The ADA parking space has to be located in front of the commons instead of right in front of the ADA room 1. Spaces also have to extend past the building's south side. If none of the 32 residents are handicapped, there would be only 7 spaces available, as only ADA eligible people can park in the ADA spot. Condition 4 should require 1 more non-ADA parking space for a total of 9, to comply with the ADA. And in our parking code, all parking shall comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Condition 6 on page 11, landscaping, the entire 1.56 acre lot is unreasonable. However, the minimum buildable lot size in the industrial district is 10,000 square feet. Consider changing the condition to all areas within the buildable lot not devoted to buildings, drives, walks, parking areas, or other authorized installations shall be covered with one or more of the following: lawn, grass, natural or ornamental shrubbery or trees. Applicants will provide a landscaping plan subject to P&Z review and approval. The approved plan must be completed within 1 year from the date of the certificate of occupancy. Condition 7, refuse containers. Please include a condition that the required refuse container shall be contained on 3 sides by a solid wood fence located on the property in a location approved by the city and not within the required front yard setback. Other conditions: could additional soundproofing of the building be required? Could an HVAC system with higher MERV ratings be required to help filter out dust? Air purifiers with activated carbon filter for fumes? Other mitigation measures? I also have concerns with the application. None of the documents on page 15 open. The site plan on page 19 seems cut off and does not show traffic aisles providing access to the parking lot spaces. The north and south elevation seems cut off. The east and west elevations were not included. This is what I received in the public document. What are the square footages and uses of the commercial building, smaller structure, and railroad cars? Which is the principal use and which is the accessory use? I realize there is a tremendous time crunch with the applicant and contractor anxious to get started on this project ASAP to be ready for next year's season. Allowing a bunkhouse at this location requires conditions to protect the residents. Taking a little more time to relocate the bunkhouse as far from the tanks as possible, provide adequate parking, screen dumpsters, and a landscaping plan will result in a much safer project and higher quality housing for the employees of this in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody else signed in?
No one else has signed in.
Okay. Then I will go from there. Is the applicant present and would like to speak?
Yes, thank you.
Let's do this.
I appreciate Carol's comments. The key to adequate staffing in Seward is having quality housing, and the biggest impediment for an employer is the lack of available land, and that's the reason that this is happening now instead of happening 3 years ago, is because I couldn't find an appropriate place that fit within the zoning for this. But then when this land became available, and I was able to get a long-term lease from Steve Lear, I decided to go ahead with it, even though building costs are 50% more than they were 3 years ago. So we decided to go ahead. Most of the people who will live in this facility will be boat deckhands and that work for Major Marine. This facility is designed by Gordon Thompson, who's the same architect that designed the 12-plex that we have on 2nd and D Street. He's also the one who designed the 16-plex that's exactly like this on the Kenai Fjord Tours parking lot property on Resurrection. So if you think about that green 16-plex on Resurrection, this is the same architect, same design. There's a few modifications. Our biggest challenge there has been working with the architect or with the civil engineers on the water drainage issue, because that's a difficult spot. So we're going to have to put it's going to be a higher property. But anyway, that's our real focus. I did think a lot about Carol's comment about the fuel tanks, but if you look at the drawing on page, whatever it is, the color photo, the challenge for me, so you've got these fuel tanks that are fully contained with a containment around them. The thing that I'm more concerned about, quite honestly, and I've talked to Steve Lear about this, is this propane tank. If you look on Lear Avenue, there's this Suburban propane tank that is at the other end of the property. I mean, and quite honestly, one of my reasons for putting the bunkhouse where I did was to avoid, I'm more concerned about a propane tank leak than I am about these diesel fuel tanks. I have no problem putting 9 spaces. We can move the parking spaces. There's plenty of room there, so I have no problem adding an additional one. And screening dumpsters is something we can also do. And so those are the ones I had a chance to write down. But anyway, so like I say, this is an opportunity to upgrade our housing, and like I've learned that the key to having, like I say, adequate staffing is having housing that our employees, I'm very proud of when the J1 inspector came and looked at our housing where our students were living. She said, "You live here?" She said, "This is the nicest housing in Alaska for J1s." And, I really believe that the people who have the best housing also have the best employees. So please, I guess, approve the conditional use permit to build the bunkhouse. Harmon Construction, who is, of course, the ones that built pretty much every bunkhouse in Seward, will be the contractor on this project. Do you have any questions of me?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else signed in to speak?
No one else has signed in.
Okay. Well, I'll close the public hearing, and are there any comments or amendments from the commission?
Yeah, I have some comments, and I also have an amendment. I think I'll start with the amendment. I would like to amend the recommended conditions, number 4, 6, and 7. I'll start with number 4, and that would require an additional ADA, an additional parking spot in addition to the ADA. So it would say 8 parking spaces are required in addition to 1 ADA compliant parking space, so 9 in total. I think that works pretty well, especially that the majority of the people staying there will utilize the non-ADA, so it'd be nice to have 1 extra. And then for number 6, I'd like to add into the end that landscaping must become completed within 1 year of structure completion. I think that putting a timeline on that is a pretty good idea. It just keeps everybody from, getting stuff done instead of kicking it down the road. And then on 7, at the end, I'd like to add that a free-wall structure with roof will be built to house the refuse containers. Makes it look nicer, keeps the snow off of everything, keeps the rain off of everything. I just think it's, just tidies the place up a little bit.
Okay. Commissioners, any other comments?
I just wanted to say, I just have concerns about having more people put into an industrial district, because it's not on the, you heard it's not on the edge of the district. It's surrounded by not 1 but 2 fuel tanks, a railroad on the other side, and it is a conditional use permit. So I just think we should think about, it has conditions for a reason.
Okay. What I'll do is, we'll take a look at, for that, we'll hold that, I'll take a look at, so it doesn't get, the water doesn't get too muddied. Can we look at these amendments first and then go there? Does that work?
So I would recommend doing one amendment at a time, and each one gets a motion and a second.
Okay. I would like to can I get a motion to amend number 4?
All right, commissioners?
I'll make a motion to amend number 4, resolution 2023-016.
I'll second.
Okay. Can we state what the amendment is exactly?
It's the additional ADA, or
So-
the additional parking
I'll read it.
spot.
So it has 8 parking spaces now, and you want to add one more to make it 9 total?
Correct.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on that amendment?
Would you just read it back, just so we're all on the same
Okay.
sheet?
So the motion on the floor is to amend the CUP to add 1 ADA space for a total of 9 parking spaces? Is that correct?
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, go ahead and vote.
Okay, voting on that amendment, Hornseth,
Yes.
Charbonneau,
Yes.
Alman,
Yes.
Verhey,
Yes.
and Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment has passed, and now the main motion as amended is back on the floor.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to amend number 6 to add a landscaping must be completed within 1 year of structure completion.
I'll second.
Okay, so the amendment is to add a timeline of 1 year for structure completion
For landscaping.
for landscaping.
After,
For
yeah.
landscape.
Okay. Any discussion or ready to vote on that amendment?
Any further? No? We're ready to vote.
Okay, voting on the amendment of adding a timeline for 1 year for landscaping. Verhey,
Yes.
Charbonneau,
Yes.
Hornseth,
Yes.
Alman,
Yes.
and Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that motion is passed, so the main motion as amended is back on the floor again.
I'd like to make one more to number 7, motion to number 7 to amend, or to add at the end, a 3-wall structure with roof will be built to house refuse containers.
Okay, and can I get a motion and a second?
Second.
Oh, we'll second.
Okay,
Sorry.
any discussion? Further discussion? No? Restate the motion if you could.
Okay, so for item number 7, the amendment is to add a 3-wall structure around the refuse containers.
Good.
Did I get that right?
No, and roof.
Oh, and a roof.
Yes. We'll just fill us in.
Okay, so the amendment would be to add a 3-wall structure and a roof around the refuse containers. Okay, and are we ready to vote on that
I
amendment?
think so. All right.
Okay, Verhey,
Yes.
Hornseth,
Yes.
Alman,
Yes.
Charbonneau,
Yes.
and Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that amendment has passed, so the main motion as amended is back on the floor.
Okay, and I'll go back to Commissioner Hornseth for his further discussion on yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I just, again, I just want to reiterate that this is a conditional use permit, and industrial, the primary reason we have industrial zoning is to kind of separate out things that are nuisance or not compatible with residential use. And so putting something inside of, not on the edge, but more or less surrounded by multiple industrial uses may not be compatible with residential use.
There are other bunkhouses, I'd like you to bring this up. There are other bunkhouses in the industrial zone, correct? Like
Yes.
Bicycle
A
and
number of them.
Precedent.
Yeah, I agree as well. I have trouble putting housing in an industrial. I know that we do have a bunch of housing in industrial for bunkhouse situations. And currently this lot, to me, isn't really being used fully as an industrial. It seems to be more of a commercial, which makes kind of a better place. But I really like to kind of see us shy away from putting people in industrial, because just because this is a pretty nice place for bunkhouse now doesn't mean that somebody couldn't put, you know, a medium industrial building next to it, and then that wouldn't be a very pleasant place to house people. The tank farm I'm less concerned about. I know it's not ideal to live next to one because it's not particularly pleasing on the eye. However, they are built to not have any issues and be contained. So I'm less concerned about that. But industrial really isn't a very good place for people to live.
Yeah. I think since we already have people already in those areas, in the industrial areas and things like this, we already set precedents. But I don't know, maybe for future, if we, as we discussed earlier, maybe we need to look at some of these things that are zoned industrial and have them looked at as commercial or auto commercial if they're not really being used industrial, so it might help protect those areas that are there.
Yeah. There is a great need for this, and I do appreciate Tom bringing forward and building and wanting to build something like this. It's just awesome.
Well, he's got the nicest bunkhouses in town.
That's true. Wow, that's all.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
The real challenge is that there's very, very few places, we're not allowed in R1, we're not allowed in R, I mean, there's very, very, I've been looking for a place to build a bunkhouse, and pretty much any time an auto commercial property comes available, I bought it. The 3-4 lots on 3rd Avenue where I built the 10-plex for Providence, those were, those lots, there's very, very few options for employee housing in town, and if you're, I agree with you that there should be more auto commercial lots available that we can build these kinds of facilities, because we're allowed to build on auto commercial without a conditional use permit, but there are so few of those available, and there are, our bunkhouse on Port Avenue has been there for 25 years at 804 Port Avenue, and that serves as our warehouse and our bunkhouse for Major Marine. Right next to this is the bunkhouse for Icicle Seafoods. So there are a lot of existing bunkhouses in that area. And I wish there was a better solution, but like I said, I've been waiting for 5 years to find a place that I could build a facility for our employees, and this came available, and so it makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree with Tom on a lot of that. We need it, and it's wonderful to have. It's just, there needs to be more auto commercial. I have an issue with this, and like I said, this lot is a good spot for it, and the lot's currently being used, an okay place to live. I think that, and there are already a few other. I think we just in the future need to start looking at maybe changing some things.
Yeah,
so we don't get in a pickle 10 years down the line.
that's true.
Yeah, we want employee housing, we want bunkhouses, it's stated in our plan, it's known. I think it highlights an issue that this is the best spot that Tom could find, this is the best option. So I think it highlights where, going forward, how can we make more space for bunkhouses? Where can we put bunkhouses?
We have an excess amount, I think, of, not excess amount, but we have quite a bit of industrial areas that are zoned industrial, and we may have to relook some of those to determine if do they truly need to be considered industrial, or do we need to make them commercial or auto commercial, and then tidy all of that up perhaps. Because the town has changed, and the zoning hasn't changed significantly in a lot of years, so maybe we need to relook some of that a little bit.
Yeah, future thing to talk about, but, this could be off, but like allowing bunkhouses is another zone, I don't know. I like what, pointing out this fuel tank deal with the one Carol's concerned about, the 4 big white ones in this color photo, and then this diesel fuel is down in the bottom left corner, I think.
No, the diesels are the other ones.
Oh,
Propane is one of the comments.
okay. And the structure's going here. I see. Okay, never mind, then I was looking at this other little tank.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, any other comments from the commissioners at this point? No? Okay, I'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Okay, so we are voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-016 as amended. So this is the final vote to pass this. Are we ready? Allman,
Yes.
Charbonneau,
Yes.
Hornseth,
No.
Verhey,
Yes.
and Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has passed as amended.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the next one. The next public hearing is Resolution 2023-017. Mr. Clerk, would you read the title into the record?
Resolution 2023-017 of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Seward, Alaska, recommending City Council and Kenai Peninsula Borough approval of the preliminary replat of waterfront tracts Mariculture Edition Tracks 1A and 1B and waterfront tracks Track 2A located at 101, 201, and 301 Railway Avenue, creating waterfront tracts re-subdivision tracks 1A-1, 1B-1, and 2A-1.
Okay, thank you. That was a mouthful. I'll need a motion and a second, please.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-017.
I'll second.
Administration, do you have any comments, please?
I just want to make one housekeeping note here real quick. In the first whereas in the resolution, the name for the Alaska Sea Life Center is going to be changed in the final resolution to state the corporate name of Seward Association for the Advancement of Marine Science, doing business as Alaska Sea Life Center.
Okay.
So that will be changed.
Okay. Alrighty. Is there any other comments that you have?
Let me run through the, okay. So I'll just direct your attention to page 33 and 34. Sorry, the plat is on this small 8.5 by 11 paper. Makes it a little difficult to see the lines, but this preliminary plat is being done for a number of reasons. Primarily, Lutic Pride, or CRRC, has requested to purchase their property in order to acquire grant money to build an additional building on that property. And so there was platting that needed to be done to establish easements that had not been previously established through that property. And then at the same time, the property adjacent to it being leased by UAF, and then the Alaska Sea Life Center. There were some minor property boundary adjustments to correct, land that was being used by one association and not the other. So if you look between the UAF property and the Alaska Sea Life Center, the entrance bordering those two properties is currently on UAF lease property, but was primarily being used by the Alaska Sea Life Center. So that property line has been shifted so that it is now on the Alaska Sea Life Center leased property. And then there was some land exchange done between UAF and CRRC. So it's where the tanks, the land exchange is done, where if you'll see in the northeast portion of the CRRC property, there's some old tanks. So half of that area was given to UAF and then CRRC acquired a triangular portion of land on the southeast corner of their property. So that's the amount of the changes that were done. A big easement being an access easement for the city to continue accessing the southern portion of the CRRC property and UAF property to do mitigation on the outflow tunnel there from Roll Canyon. Any questions or further clarification?
So it sounds to me that since you have city property and now it's going to be going over to the CRC, then you'll have to put in easements, or you'll have to create the easement, so since it'll be private more so.
Right, so, yeah, so the easements have been put into the property, the access easement, and then there is a sewer easement and possibly a water easement, but yeah, that were established so that those can be continued to be accessed and maintained as necessary.
Okay. Well, what I'll do at this point is I'll open to public hearing. We'll get that going first. Is anyone signed in, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Jeff Hetrick?
Okay, I'm one of the applicants, I can do that now or just wait.
You can do it when you are applicant. Yeah, probably the best thing. Is there anybody else signed in?
No, Jeff is the only one.
Okay, all righty. Well, then if that's it, then I will ask for the applicant to speak if there's nobody signed in for the public hearing.
Good evening, my name is Jeff Hetrick. I live outside the city limits. I'm here today to testify in support of the resolution 2023-017, which would replat the waterfront area that the Lutic Pride Institute is located on, which is 101 Railway. Specifically parcel ID 149-20016, tract 1B. About 2.5 years ago, the Chugach Regional Resources Commission, which is the umbrella organization that runs the Lutic Pride, entered into a verbal agreement with the University of Alaska Anchorage and the Alaska Sea Life Center with the city by our side to swap land and clean up the tracks on that waterfront as described. We never thought this process would take 2.5 years, but here we are before you today to ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve this replat. I'm speaking only for CRRC and APMI. This benefits us in many ways. First of all, it allows us to complete the terms and conditions of the approved purchase and sale agreement between CRRC and the city, which was originally executed in December of 2022 and has since been extended twice due to lack of a clean title. To summarize it quickly, the title company, to give us an open escrow account, they need a clean title to the property, and without the replat being complete, there's not a clean title. Therefore, CRC cannot pay the city for the property in the escrow account, so they've been kind of stuck here for quite a while. We really do want to buy the property and the land, and this will help us get to the finish line if you approve this replat. Secondly, it gives Lutic Pride closer to the waterfront access to support our coastal armoring projects and to protect our facility and waterfront. We have substantial grant funding that can protect that land from erosion and the water on the effects on the waterfall, notwithstanding the Corps of Engineers' desire to build a new bypass. We're still subject to a lot of flooding and erosion. And the application specifically opens up a lot of funding opportunities for us with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Economic Development Administration, which seem to be anxious to help us do our expansion and improve the facility. And finally, it gives us more space. It's a tight area down there. We're expanding rapidly. We've tripled our staff in the last couple of years. We have storage issues. So all this would address that concern, allow us to operate a lot more efficiently. So anyway, I urge you to support this effort. I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions?
Thanks.
Is anybody else signed in to speak at all besides the applicant?
No one else is signed in.
Okay. All right, with that, I'll close the public hearing. And I'll bring it back to the commission for comments, any amendments, if anybody has any.
No amendments. I think this is pretty straightforward. Looks like half of it is just cleaning up some existing areas, and the other parties on the other half seem to be eager to change pieces of land, so I don't see any reason why to.
Seems everybody's somewhat amenable.
Go forward.
Yeah, it seems amenable, and also I think it seems to be, will help CRC and the Lutic Pride for the efforts that they're trying to continue to move forward with. So that sounds like a win-win in all areas, and from what I can see. No other comments? Then I will go ahead and call for the vote.
Okay, voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-017, Verhey,
Yes.
Charbonneau,
Yes.
Almond,
Yes.
Hornseth,
Yes.
and Chair Sullivan.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution has passed.
Great, thank you. Then we'll move on to 9, which is unfinished business, which we apparently have none. And I'll move into new business. We have no new resolutions, and we have to discuss topics for a work session on September 19th. Administration, do you have any suggestions on that?
Yes, at that time, we'll be discussing the 2023 going into 2024 revisions of the Muni Land Plan. And so last year, as you guys know, we did a pretty significant heavy lift on that with introducing all those new maps. This year, we did actually from last year to this year, the borough updated their imagery, so Selena went ahead and updated all those maps with the new upgraded imagery for those maps. And then kind of in this round 2, we're still doing a number of proposed revisions and kind of upgrades and updating on that document. So not as heavy as last year, but it is still pretty significant. I think it will just continue to kind of decrease over time. And I just want to say too that I do appreciate the comments that public do offer towards that document, because it is very helpful. So
I
that's
think
what
keeps
we'll be.
everybody on track. I think
Yep.
that, and the fact that we did that heavy lift last time, and it just keeps it going. We're trucking along. We can review certain things, even similar to, like we're talking about any of those rezone areas that we may want to look at, and some of the areas that affect in the industrial area too. Perhaps may have look at it from that standpoint. Okay, I'll move on to the informational items. Next thing we have is just to remind everybody about the 19th of September, which we'll be doing at 6 o'clock at council chambers for the work session. We also have on October 3rd is our regularly scheduled meeting at 7 p.m. And if it's possible, and I don't know if you had the opportunity to look at it, will we be able to do that in the council chambers, or at the library?
We were not able to find out that answer today, but we'll get that to you soon.
Okay, because I'd prefer not to shift the meeting, just because of the election, because the election you're here for half a minute, we can easily go over there if you guys are, amenable to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be nice.
All right. And then also, final thing here is, on October 17th is commissioners' trainings due. So everybody has to have that in by October 17th. And I think, let me see, move on to my notes here. I think we're pretty well good to go. Let me see here. Unless there's anything else we have some comments from the commissioners and from administration, if they have anything to add. Any business,
Thank
anything?
you for all your time and review of all the packet information. Appreciate, good discussion on these topics.
Right. I think I went out of order on one thing. Do we have anybody in the audience that have anything to say? Final citizens comments on here. Everybody good to go? Okay, that's even better. Alrighty. Commissioners, anything else? No? Well, I'd like to thank everybody. Do you have anything?
I was going to thank citizens for coming. This is the biggest crowd I've had since I started.
Oh, you weren't here for the Hemlock one.
No, it's good to see, I think that promotes discussion and input and just gathering information together, so I wasn't trying to make a joke.
No, it's
Thank
good. No,
you.
really
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, because honestly, unless it's something that is significantly gives somebody a heartburn, we don't get a lot of people on the more day-to-day and for some people tedious and mundane things that planning and zoning does, and the fact that people are interested and some of the things that goes on, I think that's pretty huge, especially the city leaders that we have here that are actually showing up and having interest in what we're doing as well. So that's helpful. So, Nothing else? I want to thank administration,
For sure.
Chris,
Thanks.
for dealing with our amendments
My pleasure.
and rapid firing those out. So, well, with that then, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 7:44 PM. Thanks, everybody.